Somewhere deep in Ukraine's south, a plan was being hatched. Ukraine needed to weaken Russia's offensives, both from and within the region. Russia's control over Mariupol and its constant strikes in Kherson had allowed President Putin to continue applying pressure in the Donetsk region. Ukraine needed to do something, and on June 8, it did. A Ukrainian Mig-29 just did something unbelievable by taking out two key Russian targets with a single strike. And, worst of all for Putin, the Soviet-era fighter did it using a Western weapon it was never supposed to be able to fire. On Sunday, Militani reported that Ukraine had carried out a precision strike against Russia somewhere in Ukraine's south. Details are scant. It's not yet clear precisely where the strike took place, though it seems likely to have occurred in or around Kherson. But what is known is that Ukraine's tactical aviation unit carried out the strike using a Mig-29, which dropped a powerful French-made AASM Hammer bomb onto a building housing Russian infantry. That building exploded, taking out an ammunition storage unit and reportedly an unknown number of Russian soldiers inside. Footage of the strike emerged on the Sonyashnik Telegram channel soon after it happened. The 30 seconds of footage starts by showing what appears to be a house in what could be practically any residential area inside Ukraine. The video appears to have been shot by a reconnaissance drone, which is hovering over several houses in similar buildings. The song Shepherd of Fire by Avenged Sevenfold plays in the background as the drone centers in on a house in the middle of the shot. The music's beat drops, and as soon as it comes back up, one of the buildings explodes, sending plumes of smoke and dust into the air. That's the infantry headquarters, the latest victim of Ukraine dropping the AASM Hammer on its Russian foe. A few seconds go by, during which the smoke flowing out of the destroyed headquarters takes over much of the screen. Then it happens. A second explosion sends sparks flying into the air just to the right of Ukraine's original target. There was no additional bomb, no follow-up strike was conducted by Ukraine. The sparks shooting up into the air shows a likely detonation of stored munitions, ignited by the original Hammer strike, potentially causing hundreds of thousands of dollars of Russian munitions to go up in smoke. The drone continues to film for about 20 seconds after the strike takes place, showing just how massive the plume of smoke created has grown. Then the video cuts and the angle changes. Ukraine's drone, now flying directly above the impact zone, reveals the extent of the damage. Where once stood a Russian infantry building sits nothing but debris and shattered rubble. Another Russian target taken out by Ukraine's Air Force. Now, how did Ukraine do it? Basic details are clear. A Ukrainian Mig-29 dropped a French-made AASM Hammer precision-guided bomb to land a powerful 1-2 punch that left Russia reeling. However, none of this should have been possible. Certainly, the idea of dropping hammers from Mig-29s likely wasn't even conceived before the Ukraine war began. The Mig-29 was developed by the Soviet Union during the 1970s, according to Army recognition. Though it's capable of holding aerial bombs totaling up to 9,700 pounds across multiple hardpoints, the Hammer would have never been considered as one of those bombs when the Mig-29 went into production. It couldn't be. The AASM Hammer didn't even exist until 2007, which is when it first entered service into the French Air Force. That's nearly 4 decades of separation between the aerial platform Ukraine used and the bomb that platform dropped. Of course, missiles made decades after an aircraft first entered service being compatible with that aircraft is nothing new. The F-16s Ukraine is deploying were originally designed during the late 1970s and can fire more modern missiles, for instance. What makes Ukraine's use of the AASM Hammer in its Mig-29 so interesting is that this is a Western bomb being dropped by a Soviet-era fighter. That shouldn't happen. But, as so often been the case during Putin's supposed special military operation, Ukraine found a way to make something old a viable offensive option. In truth, it shouldn't come as a surprise to Putin that Ukraine is dropping AASM Hammers from its Mig-29s. The War Zone, or TWZ, published a recent report noting that beginning in January 2025, France planned to send hundreds of AASM Hammers to Ukraine to serve as the country's primary precision standoff weapon. Up to 50 are reported to be flowing into Ukraine every month. The AASM Technical X account reported that the Hammers were already being fitted to MiG-29s, unveiling a picture that showed the bombs attached to a MiG-29's wings. The bombs were located on the inner pylon that sits under the MiG-29's port wing and appeared to be the 551-pound variant. TWZ also reported that these pylons appeared to be the same longer versions that Ukraine uses to provide a physical interface between the MiG-29 and another Western weapon the jet shouldn't be able to fire, the American-made JDAMA, or Extended Range Guided Bomb. TWZ also reported that achieving this compatibility shouldn't have been all too surprising. Much like the JDAMA, the AASM Hammer is less a bomb itself and more a conversion kit used to turn existing dumb bombs into precision-guided munitions. That point will be explored in more detail later when explaining why the Hammer was the ideal weapon for Ukraine to use in its latest double-tap strike. Of course, installing AASM Hammers onto a MiG-29 is one thing. Using them is quite another. The first hint that Ukraine was firing AASM Hammers from MiG-29s came a few weeks before TWZ's initial report. On the left bank of the Dnipro River lay the village of Kozachi Lahiri, which is nestled in Ukraine's Kherson region. That appears to have been Ukraine's first ever Hammer target. On March 4, 2024, AASM Technical shared a 20-second video showing a Russian depot in the village exploding. Accompanying that video was a picture of an AASM Hammer with a Ukrainian inscription on its side. Ukraine was sending a clear message to Russia as far back as March 2024. Ukraine has AASM Hammers and it knows how to use them. If the March 2024 footage heavily implied that Ukraine had used AASM Hammers fired from MiG-29s to hit Russia hard, full confirmation that the precision bombs were in use came in August of the same year. That's when Ukraine released a video to Telegram, shot from inside the cockpit of a MiG-29, that showed the pilot dropping an AASM Hammer. The 9 seconds of footage doesn't show much beyond the Hammer being launched before hurtling off toward whatever its target may have been, but it showed enough. The video served as confirmation, if anyone needed, that Ukraine had solved the Hammer problem. MiG-29s could fire these Western weapons, and Putin needed to worry. Ukraine has been dropping the Hammer on Russia ever since. Fast forward to April 2025, and Defense Express reported another instance of Ukraine using MiG-29s to drop AASM Hammers on Russian targets. This time, Ukraine hit a Russian army command post alongside a military personnel hideout, obliterating a pair of buildings in Kherson. Just like the June 8 strike, nothing was left standing once the Hammer had been dropped. There's also footage of this strike. Shared to YouTube by Militani, the footage yet again appears to be shot via a reconnaissance drone. First, the video shows a Ukrainian MiG-29 hurtling through the air before the camera cuts to a shot of a large building. The view lingers there until the bomb hits. Clouds of smoke then engulf the target, much like what happened on June 8, as yet another key military installation in Kherson is destroyed. The reality is that Putin should have known something like June 8 was coming. Over a year prior, Ukraine was fitting AASM Hammers to special pylons on its MiG-29s before firing them at Russian targets. Proof that the MiG-29s were capable of firing AASM Hammers came in August, and the April 2025 strike served as a warning to Russia that Ukraine had set its sights on military facilities in Kherson. Putin didn't heed the warning. Now he's just lost some of his infantry and an ammunition storage depot thanks to Ukraine's AASM Hammers. And that's not all he lost. Though the 1-2 shot delivered by Ukraine's MiG-29 was the most impressive strike the country carried out on June 8, it wasn't the only one to hit Russia's Kherson facilities. Militani reports that Ukraine also targeted a Russian FPV drone operator post in the city just a day before destroying the infantry building. And once again, it was a MiG-29 armed with an AASM Hammer. The Sonyashnik Telegram shared the footage, which starts with a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone identifying the drone facility. What appears to be a Russian soldier exits the building to launch a first-person view or FPV drone from the building's yard. That's all of the confirmation that Ukraine needed. Those drone operators reportedly conducted several attacks in Kherson before Ukraine's MiG-29s reached them. They won't be doing that anymore. Just like the infantry building, the ammunition storage unit, and the command post that Ukraine's MiG-29s have taken out, that drone command post is nothing more than a pile of rubble after June 7. Again and again, Ukraine drops its AASM Hammer bombs on Russia's military positions. Each time, Russia struggles to defend itself and often appears unable to stop the incoming bombs. Why? Well, the answer lies in what the AASM Hammer actually is. As mentioned earlier, it isn't a bomb in the strictest sense of the word. Rather, the AASM Hammer, like the JDAM, and the special wing kits Russia uses to create its glide bombs, is a special kit Ukraine can use to transform its stockpiles of dumb bombs into precision-guided munitions. Militani provides the basic details, noting that the AASM Hammer is an upgrade primarily used to turn Western-made free-fall bombs into precision weapons. However, the AASM Hammer doesn't stop there. Unlike the US JDAM kit, the Hammer kit also features a built-in rocket motor that extends the range of the bombs it's used to convert. That extended range varies depending on the new bomb's launch altitude. When fired from down low, an AASM Hammer can travel up to 9.3 miles before touching down on its target. If the Mig-29s Ukraine uses drop the bombs from a high altitude, the range extends to around 43.4 miles. More details come from Army Recognition, which says there are versions of the AASM Hammer kit made for 275, 551, 1102 and 2204 pound dumb bombs. It's unclear which variant Ukraine used for its June 8 strike, though the initial footage upon which TWZ reported back in March appeared to show a 551 pound bomb strapped to a Mig-29. Perhaps it's safe to assume that the AASM Hammer Ukraine used to destroy the Russian infantry building weighed the same. That remains unknown. What is known is that there are multiple versions of the AASM Hammer, each with its own unique guidance system. The SBU-38 variant, which was the first to be designed, uses a combination of GPS and an inertial navigation system, or INS, to hit its target. That version is already super accurate. It has a circular error probably, or CEP, of just 32 feet. The later SBU-54 variant kept the GPS and INS while adding infrared homing to the AASM Hammer that allows it to seek out heat sources and attack them directly. That feature also allows the user to upload a reference image to the Hammer's memory, which the kit can match to its target area to ensure it's hitting the right thing. Operable during day or night, thanks to this infrared homing, the SBU-54 cuts the CEP down to just 3.2 feet. And finally, there's the SBU-64. Introduced in 2013, this variant adds laser guidance to the GPS and INS capabilities of the SBU-38, though it loses the infrared homing seen in the SBU-54. That's okay. The SBU-64 is designed to hit moving targets, which the SBU-54 can't handle, allowing it to be used in a wider variety of mission types and environments. The 3.2-foot CEP seen in the SBU-54 remains too. Ukraine likely used either the SBU-38 or SBU-54 on June 8, as wasting an SBU-64 on a stationary target would have been a waste of a valuable weapon. But it almost doesn't matter. Putin will be angry because Ukraine just took out 2 vital military installations, along with a drone command post in just 2 days. And it's soon going to get worse for Russia. Militani says that testing on the heavier version of the AASM Hammer, which can be attached to 4,000-pound bombs, was due to be completed by the end of 2024. There's no confirmation yet on whether France hit that target, but even if it didn't, the odds are that many of these heavier Hammer kits will be making their way into Ukraine when they're ready. After all, as United 24 media reports, the AASM Hammer manufacturer, Safran, produced 830 AASM kits in 2024 alone. That was 4 times the number it made in 2022. And since that year, the company has also invested around $28 million into scaling up production of the AASM system. France is clearly looking to ensure it's still building AASM Hammers for Ukraine to use deep into 2025 and beyond. And if June 8 shows anything, it's that Ukraine knows exactly what to do once it has these kits in its hands. And that leads to what all of this means for Russia. The reality is that taking out an infantry outpost and ammunition storage unit isn't going to stop Russia from launching attacks on Kherson. Ukraine hasn't reported any numbers or further details, meaning it's not yet known how many Russian soldiers were killed or what types of ammo the Mig-29 destroyed. However, that doesn't change the fact that Ukraine's AASM Hammer just killed some Russian soldiers at a time when the Russian military is absolutely bleeding when it comes to manpower. On June 3rd, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, reported that Russia was on the verge of suffering 1 million casualties during Putin's invasion. It'll reach that grisly milestone at some point during the summer of 2025, especially as Russia plans to launch a renewed offensive in Ukraine. If Ukraine's Ministry of Finance is to be believed, Russia's casualties may surpass 1 million in a matter of days. As of June 9, Russia has lost 997,120 people to death, injury or capture, the ministry claims. If those numbers are accurate, it would take no more than 3 days before the 1 million mark is broached. According to RBC Ukraine, Russia lost 1,120 soldiers between June 7 and June 8. With that sort of daily casualty rate seeming to be the norm, Russia will lose a little over 3,300 soldiers over the next 3 days. The 1 million mark will be broached, and with it comes a massive psychological victory for Ukraine. Ukraine can use Russia surpassing the 1 million mark to prove that its approach to its defense is working. For Putin, losing 1 million soldiers may not mean much. He's proven time and again that he's willing to feed his troops into the meat grinder to gain territory in Ukraine. Still, losing an infantry building to an AASM Hammer strike on June 8 means more Russian bodies have been added to the increasingly bloody pile Putin has created. Even if the sheer scale of death doesn't cause Putin problems back home, he can't ignore the effect that it's having in Ukraine. As CSIS highlights, Russia's recent advances in Ukraine have been as slow as 164 feet per day over the last couple of months. Think about what that means in the context of the casualty rate mentioned earlier. Russia is losing over 1,000 soldiers per day to capture less territory than the French and UK forces were capturing daily during the slog that was the Somme offensive of World War I. Taking a wider view, CSIS also points out that the 1,930 square miles of Ukraine that Russia captured during 2024 represents less than 1% of the entire country. For context, Russia took over 46,300 square miles of Ukraine during Putin's initial invasion. Worse yet for Putin, Ukraine's failed counter-offensive in 2023 still recaptured 19,305 square miles, CSIS says. Russia's 2024, from a territory capturing perspective, can't be seen as anything other than a massive failure. And it's only going to get worse when Ukraine is lobbing AASM Hammers from Mig-29s directly onto Russian infantry buildings. With each passing day, Russia is getting weaker as an offensive force. Its veterans are being killed by attacks such as the one seen on June 7 and June 8. They're being replaced by reservists and conscripts who barely have time to even register that they're in Ukraine before they're being pelted. Forbes reported back in November 2024 that the average Russian soldier now has a life expectancy of around 1 month. That isn't sustainable, and with every attack like the one seen on June 8, Ukraine gains more leverage over Russia. It slows down Putin's advances, it creates openings for counterattacks, and it forces Putin, again and again, to find replacements for the soldiers he's losing. June 8 was just one example of a far bigger problem that Putin faces as his war drags into 2025. As he loses more of his soldiers, Ukraine keeps on proving that it's able to innovate and maximize everything from Soviet-era technology to Western-made munitions to damage Russia's forces. Ukraine's Mig-29s are likely to strike with their AASM Hammers again, and it seems that there's little that Russia can do about it. June 8 represented another day and another victory for Ukraine against Russia. A double victory, in fact, as Ukraine destroyed 2 key Russian facilities. But it's just another example of the hits that keep on coming from Ukraine. Now, check out our video from a couple of days ago that reveals how Ukraine also wiped a Russian Iskander missile base off the map. And remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more videos covering the latest development in the Ukraine war.